Sending a preliminary notice at the start of any construction project is an important first step to make sure you get paid on time. In fact, in a lot of states, if you don't send the notice, you won't be able to file a mechanics lien later on. We recommend sending a preliminary notice on every job, even if your state doesn't require one. Sending this notice isn't just about protecting your lien rights. It notifies the owner and the GC and potentially others that you're on the project, and this opens a line of communication and helps you get paid faster. Sometimes after sending a prelim, details from your contract may change from what you stated on your initial notice. Maybe that start date was pushed back, maybe the scope of work changed, or perhaps the contract value increased after you sent the prelim. Changes are extraordinarily common on construction contracts, so it happens. You may be wondering, do I need to update the preliminary notice and resend it? Making changes to a preliminary notice creates some other potential issues you may want to watch out for. Does your state allow revisions to preliminary notices? Are there specific requirements for what can be revised, or do any of the deadlines change? It's all important to keep in mind. Let's talk through a few scenarios where you might need or want to revise a preliminary notice and what to watch out for when you do. Most states don't require revised preliminary notices. This is probably the most important statement in the video, so I'm going to say it again. Most states don't require you to send any new preliminary notice if the details change. Arizona is one glaring exception to this rule. In Arizona, the estimated contract price or value must be included on a preliminary notice. And if the value on that contract changes by more than 30%, you're required to amend or revise your prelim. For example, let's say you're installing a pool and patio for about $30,000. After you start work and you've sent a preliminary notice, the owner decides to increase the size of the patio and to add a pool heater. This increase makes the total project about $40,000, and then at that point, it would require an updated preliminary notice to protect your right to get paid on an extra $10,000 worth of work. While it's crucial to remember this rule in Arizona, this type of requirement is exceedingly rare. In most every other state, there is no requirement for sending revised preliminary notices. Amending a notice before the deadline is generally okay though. As a good rule of thumb, if you're still within your preliminary notice deadline, there's little risk in sending an amended notice. For example, let's go back to California. In California, preliminary notices must be sent within 20 days of first starting work. If you send notice on your first day of work, and then on day 10, you realize that something on the prelim wasn't quite accurate, resending the prelim might not be that consequential. After all, you're still within that 20 days. However, the closer you get to that 20-day mark, you'd want to be more cautious about sending an updated notice. Amending a preliminary notice after the deadline could arguably kill your mechanics lien rights. In most states that require preliminary notices, sending a notice after the deadline won't preserve any lien rights. However, the most significant potential problem usually occurs in the states with rolling deadlines and protection. Now, it's a bit of a gray area, and that's certainly not a cut and dry rule. But whenever you send a revised preliminary notice, that might call your original notice date into question. Let's use California again as an example. A preliminary notice only protects your work for the 20 days before you sent the notice, as well as all the work done afterwards. So if you sent a prelim on the 20th day of the job, great. Your lien rights are protected for all the work and materials provided for that project. But imagine those details change on the 100th day and you decide to update your notice. If you send an updated notice, others on the job may see that as replacing the original notice. And if that's true, then the new notice would only protect your payment rights from the 80th day of work to the end of the job. Arguably, sending an updated notice could potentially erase 80 days worth of protection. Certainly, it's possible to designate the notice as a follow-up or as an amended notice, but it's just better to avoid the issue altogether if possible. Of course, there are certain situations where sending a revised prelim would be beneficial. Still, it's important to weigh the pros and the cons before rocking the boat. And looking to your state's notice requirements will help to identify whether sending a revised notice is a good idea. If you have more questions about your specific project, feel free to go to levelset.com and get your questions answered by construction attorneys for free on our Expert Center. Or better yet, give us a call or live chat with us to explore different options for automating preliminary notices and other paperwork so you don't ever have to worry about them again. And remember, payment help is here.